Recorded live from the secret underground lair of Crimson Cowl Comics and Collectibles, this is the Crimson Cowl Comic Club Podcast.
The following issues may contain spoilers. Stay back, folks. We're still trying to figure out exactly what's happening here. I'm Anthony.
I'm David.
I'm Kirby.
I'm Katie.
And I'm Desmond.
Welcome to issue number 267 of the Crimson Cowl Comic Club Podcast. Each and every week, we meet here to talk about comic books. We don't have any club discussions this week, but we do have a replacement segment because you heard an extra voice in there. We have a creator spotlight for Desmond Reed, who is the creator of the Cola Pop Creemees opening act. But then we will jump over to the weekly reviews. That segment, we go back and forth, talk about what we've been reading. Let's jump into the show. Ladies and gentlemen, we are joined here with a brand new creator spotlight with a Boston-based cartoonist, Desmond Reed. Welcome to the show.
Well, thank you. Thank you so much for having me.
Yes, so it is a pleasure to have you here. And what's kind of cool about how this happened, we've been talking about this for months to kind of get you on the show. And, you just been booked up. You've just been on all the big talk shows, Tonight Show, late shows, the late shows, and all that stuff. But finally, the schedule's aligned. We're basically waiting for the copies of your new book, The Cola Pop Creemees opening act, to come out. But this all started because I saw this in the previews catalog. It would have been maybe like January or something like that, beginning of the year. We're flipping through the independent side of the catalog, and under the Birdcage Bottom books, I happened to notice the Cola Pop Creamies, and I read the description, and I thought it was great, and I saw the characters and the title, and while they say don't judge a book by its cover, I 100% did, because I'm like, this is amazing. I don't know what it is, but I got to learn more about it. And that led me to the Birdcage Bottom Books website, led me to your Instagram page, and then that led to these, which I talked about in a previous show of the Crimson Cowl Comic Club, your zines, which contain the characters from the Cola Pop Creamies. And so for the better part of 2023, your work has been in our hands and in our minds for quite some time here. So what we're going to do before we jump into the actual graphic novel, we want to learn more about Desmond Reed. So the first thing I kind of like asking a lot of creators, a very original question, but basically, what was your earliest memory of getting into comic books, discovering comic books?
That's a great question. Yeah. I think like a lot of folks my age, a lot of kids my age, I got really into the Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles and a little later the X-Men. So I love the X-Men shirt. And my dad was a lifelong fan of comics. So when I got into that stuff, he was like, it's based on comics, right? And I think at the time, like it was a little less about discovering a new art form because I was like 5, but it was kind of more like there are more adventures with these characters I like. And so that was kind of the gateway. And I think especially with because the X-Men was a little bit later, that got me into the comic book store. And then from there, I started jumping into other titles. Like I really liked Milk and Cheese by Evan Dorkin. I liked Madman, Bone, just like a lot of different stuff. And so it was just kind of always in my life after that. But yeah, it was those two titles that got me into it.
And a good thing to kind of learn, like as we meet new fellow geeks, it's always good to kind of figure out, like, all right, who are their favorite characters, whether it be in comic books, whether it's regular books, maybe even television movies. If you had to pick just a small handful of favorite fictional characters, what pops up in your mind?
Oh wow, that's a really good question. Wow, I'm not prepared for that. I think so. I really like Wolverine. To go back to the X-Men, that is not an original answer, but he's just very cool. I liked him as a kid a whole bunch because I feel like there was a real big episode of the X-Men, the animated series, and I think this was in a comic book too, where I think he was like forgotten in some battle, and then he came back and saved everybody. And as a kid, I was like, "This is the coolest thing I've ever seen." But I really liked him. I think as an adult, I like flawed characters a whole bunch. I'm trying to stick with like animation or comics, but I've recently I watched The Sopranos. I really enjoy all the characters on that. I like shows like that where the characters aren't really good or bad, but you understand their motivations. But if I'm going, I guess this isn't a comic, but it's more, it's an animation. But I like BoJack Horseman. I don't know if anybody's watched that, but
It's on my
uh,
long list. It's on my long list.
oh, real, oh, real. It's
Yeah.
worth the watch. Some of the most devastating stuff I've ever seen has been on that show. But watching it, like, if you I don't want to ruin anything, and I'm not, but like if that show is about anybody else on that show, he'd be the villain, he'd be the antagonist. But as you watch it from his perspective and you see what got him to that place, um, you're kind of with him a little bit. It's like Breaking Bad or any of those shows. So those are the characters that really stick out to me, kind of the morally ambiguous ones. And so the one fresh on my mind right now is BoJack Horseman because I recently kind of rewatched that again. And I guess arguably Wolverine's in that same category. He's like a murderer, but he's the guy that we're rooting for. And so yeah, I'm gonna go with Wolverine and BoJack Horseman, the big two. Yeah.
I think that's great because I think I like hearing about like people's favorite characters because then to spend a lot of time to catch up with on who you are and what you like. Hearing that just kind of really starts get the my mind going, being like, oh, okay, I can kind of start figuring this guy out.
Nice. Oh, I gotta go. Oh, I recently read the Walking Dead comic. I gotta go with Negan too. He's in that
Oh,
same category
nice.
where yeah, I love him on the show, but in the comic he's a little bit different. And I enjoy both versions, but
Yeah,
that's another one where it's you learn more about him and it's sort of like, oh, I understand why he did all the things he did. My God, what does that say about me?
exactly. And this will end the interview. Thanks for being. Oh
Yeah.
wait, we got some more here. All
Have
right.
you have
Yes.
you read the Negan book? Or
I
is
no,
one?
this is horrible. I read the synopsis,
Right.
but I'm planning on reading the whole thing. But I know what happens and everything,
All right.
and the episode on the TV show is one of my favorite of the series. But yeah, I've got to read the real thing. I don't know why I read the synopsis. I couldn't wait or something.
And another question here is kind of finding out if you've always been drawing, or kind of when maybe the earliest memory of when drawing came into your life.
Oh, absolutely. Yeah. I just kind of came out drawing. Like both my parents draw, but they never pushed it on me or anything. It was just kind of a natural thing that happened. And like, I used to draw my wall as a kid, and they were cool with it. Like, I just sort of, I still have like, I think it was either me or my sister drew on like this plate when we were like babies, and it's still hanging up in my parents' house, and it's just like scribbles or whatever. But yeah, it was just always something I did. I was always like like I grew up in a very small town, so whenever there was something that like the class had to do and they needed somebody to draw something, I was that guy. I was that person. And so it's always been part of what I did. There were definitely sort of because I got into music too, and so there were like gaps in my life where I wasn't drawing, but it was always there, in some respect. And that's probably why I write about people, a band at this point. But yeah, it's been in my DNA forever.
Well, it's funny you mentioned the plate thing because that's in one of the comics. That's right away. I'm just like, I don't remember where to
Yeah,
pinpoint it, but I'm like, okay, I've read that before, so that's kind of cool to know.
yeah, yeah. No, a lot of the stories kind of come from like, even if it's not the whole story, like little small moments that grow into bigger things. Yeah, that's in the Lefty mini comic.
There it is.
Yeah.
And before we get into the next segment of the questions, are going to be talking about the actual stuff that you make. Does anybody have any questions about young Desmond Reed before we jump into actual Cola Pop Creamies related things? Feel free to jump
Well,
in.
first off, with your like of animation and stuff like that, those type of characters and things, this is kind of weird. It's manga related somewhat, but on Netflix, or no, it's Hulu. I think I'm watching. Yeah, Hulu. I'm watching on right now, but it's called Assassination Classroom. You got this octopus armed teacher that is gonna destroy the world in a year, and he's wants to teach a class, so he's teaching a class of students that are authorized to try and kill him every day. So it's a really unique, fun thing, and yet he's waiting to be assassinated, waiting to destroy the world, and yet he's teaching the kids all kinds of lessons along the way. It's fun, but it's got that manga stuff too. So, but yeah. I was curious, what inspired your style of artwork? Were you sitting with a significant other at a big fair or something and seeing the floaty guys, or were you buying a new car?
Um, it's tough. I get asked this a lot because it's kind of like I have a weird style, and I kind of forget. I kind of forget. I think it like literally taking small things from things I like oh, I like how this person draws ears. I like how this person draws eyes and stuff, and not having fully the ability to replicate it. And then so that whole combination coming together, it made for a really strange style that I don't even really fully know where it came from. I think I was doing actually I you know not to sound all Hollywood, but I was doing another interview and someone asked me that, and I realized I think The Max by Sam Keith.
Okay.
I think a lot of stuff came from that because that's it's kind of a heavy series, but a lot of the stuff is drawn in a very cartoony style.
Unique, yeah, different,
Yeah,
kind of exasperated and
yeah, and it's different because obviously he's like painting and using a lot of mixed media, and I'm not. But I think the kind of the spirit of that is probably the biggest to me. That probably the biggest influence, but. Yeah, I think it's a mixture of just being into a lot of stuff and a lack of ability. It kind of made for an interesting combination that it's hard for even me to pinpoint at this point.
cool.
Well, that was a great question because that was basically a summary of what I was going to lead into, talking about inspirations and such. So, jumping into the actual Cola Pop Creamies proper, the first thing I read of yours was apples. Once I had figured out about the Cola Pop Creamies, and I think I reached out to you and asked what the zines were and all this kind of stuff. And the first thing I opened up to, we see superlatives here as we see our cast. And we meet Ralph Jonathan, who is most likely to succeed, Wallace TJ, who is the class clown, Mona Gertrude, who is the most artistic, Gil Christopher, who is the most changed, and Henrietta Susan, who happened to count the votes. So just seeing that opening intro, like as sad as that was, because there's a lot of sadness whenever Henrietta Susan stories are related. But I had a chuckle, but then also felt bad. So that was my introduction to these characters. How do like the names are that inspired by anything, or is this just all random stuff you came up with for the actual character names?
That's a really good question. I think when I first started with these characters, that they weren't fully formed, and at the time I was thinking they would be like the story would be about a cult, and so I kind of thought like I don't know anything about cults, but I thought like having two names would kind of I don't know it would suggest this sort of different way of living. And at the same time, I was also thinking like, well, what do I name these characters? And I didn't want to name them anything that had already been around. Like I was like, I'll name this one Mickey. I was like, oh, Mickey Mouse. So I thought no one's done two names. So I did that, and I think at the time, like I was just going for straight, like just kind of weird. And so I did the names that just did not rhythmically sound good at all. And then I found they just kind of stuck. People liked them. When I started kind of posting them, people heard about them. It gave them this odd, this kind of little odd flair. So I just kind of ran with it. And now I don't even think about it. But yeah, it's I don't think anybody else has named their character like Gil Christopher. So I think I'm all set with like copyright or anything.
That's what I was wondering, if you knew like a Mona or a Gil. That's where I was kind of wondering, if you gave little odes to that, but it's just based off of just kind of going with the double name like that. So
yeah,
I like it. It makes the names, it makes the character names more memorable. If you just named them like Chris, Steve, and Joanne, you get so many of those characters in such a large variety of media and comics and everything. So sometimes it's hard to remember character names. I'm horrible with names. Everybody here can probably attest to that. But when you have names like that with that combination, I think they stand out. They're more memorable because it makes them a little bit more interesting just in the name alone.
That's great.
And that's coming from a guy named David who named his firstborn David. So
that's great.
That's Pepsi David now.
Oh, it's Pepsi David. Yeah, yeah. He's got different superlative names. And do you want to give us a quick pitch on what exactly is the Cola Pop Creamies for those that don't know?
No, that's I wish I was slicker. I've never been able to come up with like a perfect elevator pitch, but it's deep. It's character studies into five people who also just happen to be in a band. One thing I've been trying. So I've got like a few pitches, but none of them have 100% worked. One is drawn happy, written sad. Another one is, what if Bugs Bunny acted the way he did because of a sad childhood?
Ooh,
Uh-huh.
there you go.
But yeah, no, it's it's about the five members of a band.
As the back of the book says, laugh and cry as you witness the members of the psychedelic rock band the Cola Pop Creamies tackle depression, anxiety, trauma, family, heartbreak, jobs, parents, memories, addiction, drugs, alcohol, stress, comics, obsession, loss, creativity, music, school, unrequited love, mental health, existential sadness, and more. And when I read that initially in that previews catalog, yeah, I like the rattling off. It's just like, oh, this list isn't ending. I'm kind of laughing and feeling bad at the same time, and being like, oh, I'm just getting a lot of emotion just from the synopsis alone. So yeah, that is basically the intro to what the Cola Pop Creamies is.
Nice.
And
We're going for search terms. Yeah.
the few that I read, it's basically a variety of wonderful stories that kind of relate all together, that kind of take a little bit of everyday life lessons and kind of teach us a little thing that we all may have gone through or may have seen someone else go throughout life.
Yeah.
All right. So jumping into the next bit here, talking about the characters. I've read everything from all of these zines as well as the opening act. And while Mona Gertrude has been my favorite throughout all of them, that's the one I kind of really leaned into. I loved her story. But then reading opening act, I started to lean towards Gil Christopher because there was a little moment when they had revealed that he had a love of meatball subs. And I love meatball subs, and that's all it took for me to just kind of jump into being like, "Hey, this Gil Christopher guy, he's got something here." So I just wanted to throw that out there when it came to favorite characters, favorite stories at the moment of this club. I know Kirby's waiting for his copy in the mail. We were given a sample of a story called "Wasted" that's in the opening act here, but I just want to call out "Season's Greetings" and "Talent" were my two favorites out of here. Um,
That is so good to hear because I feel so. Season's Greetings was the first story I wrote for the book. And that was the first time I'd ever done anything that wasn't just meant to be like goofy. And so that was, to me, that's a very, that means a lot to me because that is also the story no one talks about.
oh,
So to me, I'm always afraid that that has like, because of my personal connection with it and it being like kind of the risk that started everything, but nobody likes it. But that's great to hear. And to a certain extent, also talent. I feel like those are the two stories people haven't really talked about, but those are two of my personal favorite stories. I think just balance wise, talent is maybe that's probably my favorite in the book, maybe. But yeah, those are two stories that have a real personal connection, especially Season's Greetings to me. So thank you so much for being the first person to say something about them.
okay. And now we're gonna end the show on that note. Wait, I got some more here. But yeah, and then talking about talent, I just really love Mona's comic strips. We see a little glimpse at her like page long comic strips with we see somebody who's making a comic book, which is you, and within there a character is also making comics, and I always love that, just that meta deep dive type of thing. But her stuff is really funny. It's stuff that I'd be like, oh, I would buy just Mona's comics. So, if, in case there's any kind of sparkling of an idea, it would be a cool little collection maybe down the road. If Mona released her own book as an artist, they've done that with the Castle TV show, where they've released novels where Richard Castle, played by Nathan Fillion, was the author of the book. So, just in case you want to release any Mona Gertrude collections.
Well, it's fun. It's funny you say that. Those are my old comics. So those are the kind of comics I used to do, like when I first started, like maybe like 10 years ago. And so when I needed like a stand-in for the stuff that she had done. I was like, well, I do have all those old comics that I felt I didn't think anyone was interested in back when I put them out. And then so they kind of got a second life. So thank you. You're really stroking my ego here. My God, those are my old comics that I felt no one liked, and then the 2 stories that I wasn't sure if people were into. Thank
Now
you.
you know they could have a third life. You know, you gotta publish those now. Anthony will buy every copy.
There we go. And then yeah, all I'll have to do is, we'll see that PayPal transaction for saying those good words. We'll see it. We'll deal with all that stuff after, but also a note I had made was you'll see a title of a Desmond Reed comic or a book that says you'll find the key behind the tree. Is that something that you've done before, or did you just make that up just for a background Easter egg?
So I made that up just as a background. I was trying to think of like an author name. I was like, I guess I'll use mine, But in her, I know the story. I don't want to like spoil anything, but in the story you're talking to, she does find the key behind the tree.
There we go. All right, so we're in the middle of it here. Cola Pop Creamies. Kirby, did you have any questions to throw
Yeah,
in?
I entered a comic contest this summer, and that I'm doing a comic for, and I decided to go with something that's personal, life, all something from my life's past and stuff like that. Are your characters, do they have a relation to someone you know? Like, do you have a Wallace TJ in your life? I relate to every one of your characters in some way, shape, or form. Little bits and pieces of them, and that's why I love how they're set up. I love their names, because even though they're unique names, they're still the every person to me. They work out perfectly for some reason after you just start reading it and get into the books. So I was curious if you have a Wallace TJ in your life, and or if he might be a part of your earlier life, or
No, that I appreciate that very much. I feel like I'm just saying thank you and what a great question every time, but thank you, what a great question. No, so they're all basically me. Like I think everybody it starts with me, and then a lot of them have different elements of like my friends and family, just whatever links in. But it's funny because Wallace TJ is the only person who there is no link except for me. For those who don't know, so Wallace TJ is kind of like the partier and stuff, and he's based on me when I'm either drunk or just really comfortable around people. Where there was kind of like a certain weird quality where I found that like, especially when I was younger, I would just make these like goofy jokes or just do something real selfish, and then I just sort of like smile after, and people would usually laugh. And I thought that was kind of an interesting basis for a character. Um, and so he's kind of an extreme version of that, but technically he's the only person who's solely based on me, which is horrifying.
yeah, because I have a variety of people like him in my life, but I also was that character when I lived on the streets and in my van, and kind of like popped into people's houses and stuff like that. Just showed up for the parties and things.
Yeah, I feel like I credit it too with sort of again, I grew up in like a really small town, and I feel like the people I thought were cool were like the people who were like, wow, that guy can drink so much and stuff. Like it was just sort of this sort of ingrained thing. And like I remember people picking up cigarettes off the ground, like the people would discard.
Oh yeah.
I think they're called like refries.
Oh,
And
I did it when I was living on the streets of Arizona.
yeah, and I'd never done it, but it was so ingrained just from seeing people do that even now, like years later, I'll see I'll see a cigarette on the ground, and I'll be like, wow, there's still a lot of white left on that. I'm surprised somebody discarded that. I'm like, what am I doing? I gotta get past this.
Yeah. That's great.
The next big question here might be a 5-point question, but how did the house hand come in? I don't remember if there was a story that was related here somewhere, or how did this idea come where the band members live in a giant hand house?
I'd like to explore it in like a story later, but as the way I came up with it, I think that was back during the cult days, where I just thought like that would be an interesting kind of psychedelic thing for them to live in. They could each live in a finger, and it could be, I don't know, just kind of like part of their lifestyle, whatever that means.
Sure.
But I think it was very casual. I think there were a lot of casual decisions I made at the beginning that stuck with them. That I don't know. I like that. again, like not a lot of thought went into it, but I like now that it was a consistent part of it because the book's kind of heavy, but then there's this sort of goofy or I keep psychedelic or whatever you want to call it element that makes it not so heavy. Makes it makes the pill a little easier to swallow. But yeah, I just stuck with it. I think visually it looks kind of cool, and I think it's kind of grown as time went on. Like even in opening act, I look in that, and it's just sort of. I think I just filled it in as black all the way, but as time went on, I've started to put like stripes on it and everything. So I just like how it looks. I don't know.
Yeah, it's cool. It is described too about who gets what room, and then there's a very very character specific on why certain characters get certain sizes of the fingers. So
Yeah.
It fits
Especially-
good with the band because all members of the band form a hand. It's like they all have that key point, and the hand is a key part of all the members' activities in the band, anyways. So
Yeah.
So then, talking about, I reached out to you throughout the week, as well as reaching out to a friend of mine who was in the Boston area, and I had asked her, just being like, if I say the word creamy, I'm like, what does that mean to you? And she sent me a picture and showed me what we would think is an ice cream cone. Now,
Yeah.
can you explain the whole idea of the word creamy and how it exists in your life and in your area, and how it became part of your title?
Absolutely, yeah. So in the town where I grew up, we had an ice cream place, and they called, I think, what most people call soft serve, they called that creamy, and spelled the exact same way. And so, like into adulthood, that's always what I referred to it as. Like when I get a soft serve, it's like, can I have a creamy twist or whatever? And and I didn't really know what it meant. Like I thought it was just specific to this one ice cream place growing up. But looking it up on so when I wanted to call this band that, I wanted to make sure it like didn't mean anything weird or anything. And so I looked it up, and I think it's more of a Vermont thing. So I live in Massachusetts, but in Vermont, it's sort of similar to like the sub grinder debate, what the sandwich is called. But I might be wrong about this, but I think that in Vermont there's something called a creamy, and it's a soft serve, but it is slightly different. I think it has more cream in it.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's just a word that stuck with me. I think I like the two double E's. It was originally because I used to order a mixed creamy, which was vanilla and chocolate, and that was going to be the original name of the band. But then it's kind of hard to say. There's sort of like a weird consonant thing of mixed creamy, like it's awkward to say, so I changed it. But yeah, it's just an ice cream cone. Yeah, it's still my favorite ice cream. I still like soft serve.
and we do have ice cream creameries popping up in Wisconsin lately, right on the farms. We have one out here in Eden area and stuff too. But here, all this time I was thinking Laverne and Shirley, you were hooked on the show and watching her make the ice cream drink that she does.
Oh, interesting. Do you guys call it a creamy, or do they call it a creamy, or is that?
No, they just do the creameries. But
Oh yeah.
So yeah, we'll say soft serve. Your chocolate vanilla, we'll just call it twist cone, things like
Yeah.
that. We
Twist,
got a lot of Dairy Queens in our area and stuff like that. And I had done some research, and when I talked to my Boston friend, she had mentioned the Vermont thing, and she goes, the maple creamy is like the popular one that people talk about, and the fact that it has just more butter fat is kind of what some light research. But I had a reasoning behind asking you that, because it wasn't just to really get into the minutia of it all and really get into your head, because I had something else in mind, because I wanted to do some fan art. And if this pops up
Oh,
here,
that's
um,
amazing.
so yeah, I decided to draw this throughout the week, and I'm like, well, I should put a creamy there, and I'm like, all right, I got to figure out what a creamy is. And when I sent you a picture of a cone, you're like, yeah, that's basically it. So I'm like, okay, I'm off to the races here. So
Oh,
yeah,
that's amazing. Can you
there's some.
can you
And,
send
and
that to me?
I will, once the episode's coming out and everything like that. But yeah, so that's why I really wanted to know about the creamy.
Oh, that's beautiful. That's so cool.
Thank you,
Thank you
thank
for
you.
doing that.
Yeah, no problem. Okay, so any other questions to throw in before we get into the last leg of the interview here? Kirby, do
I'll
you have
let you
anything?
last leg first.
All right. Okay, jumping right in. Speaking of legs, Kirby touched on this a little bit. talking about like the wacky waving inflatable flailing arm two men type of design to your characters. So that's one thing I've noticed. There's a lot of squiggly arms, squiggly legs, squiggly fingers, and especially Gil's dad's knees. I'll just let the reader figure out what that means when you pick up the Cola Pop Creamies opening act. Um, Now we do see a little origin of it and how it could be contagious, and what one of the characters might be going through when there's a lot of wiggling going on. But is there any more that you can kind of dive into on, because that becomes a theme where a lot of characters just have wiggly limbs. Is there anything to that?
I wish I had a deep answer. I don't know anatomy, and so I that was sort of a little bit of a shortcut, and I thought it looked cool, and it sort of communicated emotion pretty well. So it's kind of that thing. So I like Peanuts a lot. I like uh, Charles Schultz, and something he said was that oh hey,
I thought you meant peanuts, but okay, go ahead.
you know what? I like real peanuts too. But no, Charles, it was something that he said was that I knew what I could do and I just did that. And so that's kind of the spirit in which I do the squiggly arms, where squiggly limbs, basically. And because I know I can do that, but like nothing's really anatomically accurate or anything like that. So I've just leaned into it, and now that's kind of in and of itself, that's something I kind of strive to do. It started as a shortcut, and now it's part of the style. But I don't know. Yeah, I mean, I wish I
think
knew a better answer, but
I think right what you said off the bat there, just talking about not knowing much about anatomy, and as people draw, you might spend so much time being like, all right, the eyes, don't
yes,
look right, the ears are different sizes, they're too high, they're too low, and sometimes you could just really get into that too much to the point where it just gets frustrating. But I like the idea of just being like, yeah, just let it go nuts with it, and go wild. And now you've created it's a style, it's a theme, it's ends up being jokes, and yeah, I think it works.
nice.
So now, as we get towards the end here, I kind of want people listening and watching at home. How can they get their squiggly arms and hands on a copy of the Cola Pop Creamies? How do people reach out to you to buy your comic books?
So I think the easiest way, so my biased way of doing it, you can just kind of Google and so like in a bunch of places, but my biased way of doing it, getting it right from Birdcage Bottom Books. I think that is, you're supporting a small publisher. They always put goodies in the package when they send them out. And again, I just like Birdcage Bottom Books. They're the ones who believed in my work and put it out. Can't say enough good things. If Birdcage, if you can't find the website, there are a lot of other places you can get it. Another good place is Radiator Comics. They've never published anything of mine, but they've distributed a bunch of stuff, and they're good folks as well. But yeah, just do a simple Google search. But if you want, Birdcage Bottom Books or Radiator Comics.
Good. And I highly enjoyed the opening act. I dug the zines. I even reached out to you, I think a couple months ago, before when the Kickstarter was still active. And I had asked you, I'm like, all right, is this all new material? Is this just reprints of the individual zines? Even if you said they were all just, if you were collecting all the zines into a graphic novel, I was ready to just buy it again, because I like those stories. I wanted that collection. But yeah, you get, there's maybe like one or two short things that are in here, but the majority of this is a brand new thing. So I highly recommend it. It's a lot of fun. It's real interesting. The style is just kind of quirky and weird and new. And there's a lot of, we talked about just with the different emotions of the characters. There's a lot of hilarity in there. There's a lot of sadness, a lot of deep thoughts. And like Kirby had mentioned, kind of relating to every character, there's something there that, I think everyone can really touch on. And you take a lot of like dark humor moments that, are definitely very funny, but then, I kind of sit there and being like, oh, you can, there's a beat where you just kind of, you're laughing, and then you're like, oh, okay, I can relate. Okay, I know that feeling right there. And that's real powerful stuff that you've been doing that. So,
Well, I appreciate that. Thank you very much.
Kirby, you got any final questions here?
I can't wait to get my Cola Pop Creamies in the mail. That little teaser of Wasted, when he puts the kid on the shoulders and something happens to the kid's face, that cracked me up so much, that part. But Rhombus, is that basically just a full out representation for all types of drugs and alcohol?
Pretty much, yeah.
Okay.
That was always just kind of a word I liked, and so
I like that view of it. So.
similar to Creemees, yeah. So I think it kind of comes from like if it was a specific drug, then suddenly it would be about that drug, and that would be what the story was. So yeah, I just sort of just kind of all vices. It's just all this one thing, and so that was a choice, and but yeah, yeah.
Okay. And I'm
So
hooked
there's
on all
only
these
Rhombus.
things. I'm hooked on all these books so far. Is there any chance of a reprint of the ones that are sold out? I've looked
Probably.
for them and can't find them anywhere.
No, I appreciate the interest because like people have kind of talked about those. Probably not. But that's for your benefit. I think the things that are out are the good. So I kind of had like a period of time where I was still figuring myself out, and that's what those books are. But the stuff that's out now, that's the good stuff. The other stuff, I mean, I guess from a, like completionist's angle.
That's me.
And
I'm
I
one of
was,
those weird people that like, no matter what it is, I like to go all the way back to the beginning.
dude, I can relate to that. So, like when I like a band, when I like a movie, I get real into it and just try to find everything. I like when I'm into an album, I try to find all the B-sides, all the demos, all that's like on YouTube or whatever. So I get it. But now, as the person who made the thing, you don't want to see that stuff.
And then open it up to David and Katie. Feel free if you have anything. Otherwise, I got one final thing to kind of wrap this up here. But if you had anything, jump in.
I don't know. I feel like at this point, if I ask questions and he didn't thank me for asking such a wonderful question, I'd be like, "Oh man, I asked the dud." No, I think there was some good stuff there. And like you're talking about all your interests and stuff and the music and everything, and I'm holding back because I wanted to be like, oh, what kind of music you all these different things that could just veer into this long conversation. But so I've kind of held back on that because I don't want to turn this into a 5-hour interview. But no, I found it very very interesting. Kind of wish that there was more time because I feel like this is a guy I have plenty of things that sound like I might have in common that I could sit here and talk about. I think there's a lot of people that we've encountered and that we know that have like this assortment of interests. They get into the drawing and they're doing comics and they have an interest in music. Maybe have had some band experience or whatever. And it seems like there's just a number of people out there that have those shared things. So maybe it's, just a certain type of personality that gets drawn to all these things.
Absolutely. What a wonderful comment, and thank you for your comment.
Absolutely. So, Desmond, loved hearing your thoughts on this subject. I was wondering if you could like hang out with any band, like which band would it be?
Whoa. Okay. Oh wow. Oh wow. I've never thought about this, and there's it's just band names are just racing through my head right now. If I can only pick one.
For sure.
Oh,
Well,
man.
I tell you what, I won't hold you to it. So, like, maybe do a rapid fire of what's coming out of your brain.
Okay, I appreciate that.
Sure.
So this might date me a little bit, but I'm thinking the Red Hot Chili Peppers.
Okay. Nice. Nice.
When I was a kid, the band that blew my mind, please don't make fun of me, was Korn. I really liked Korn a whole bunch, and I still do. I still the whole catalog, even the dubstep album. Yeah.
For sure. Yeah, Korn is definitely, I feel like, underappreciated. Like, yeah, it's very iconic, like 90s mall kid, but they actually have some really good stuff.
I agree. They changed guitar playing forever. But oh man, when I was going back even further, I was a real big fan of Weezer and Green Day, like kind of 90s alternative.
Sure.
Tool seems very interesting. I've seen interviews with them, and they seem a lot smarter than me. they say things I don't quite get.
Okay.
Man, Primus. I don't know. A lot. Am I embarrassing myself? I don't know. It's a lot of 90s.
No, You're
What a
doing
90s
great. You're doing great. I was expecting, since we're talking about like a psychedelic influence and like like cults and stuff. I was expecting like Grateful Dead, Pink Floyd, and all. They're fantastic too. But no, I like that you're taking this in a very 90s and late 80s based prog rock, alt rock direction. I'm loving that. That's far out. So some of those people would be really fun to like just talk to and see what's on their mind.
I agree. Even just I would take 15 minutes with Corn.
Yeah,
I
that
feel
would be
like
cool.
if I could prepare the questions, oh man.
Yeah, that would be awesome.
Good. All right. So as we close out of the Cola Pop Creamies here, is there anything that you can talk about that you're working on now, or do you have any plans in your head of what's going to be the next project, the next move? Because I think creators love to like put their heart and soul into a piece of work, and then everyone reads it within an hour, and then they're like, "What's next? Where's the next thing?" So, is there anything? Do you know what direction you're heading?
Yeah, it's an interesting phenomenon because that took me like a year, and yeah, it's like 20-minute read, Um, so I have a couple things. I have a lot of things going, but a couple big things where I've got the follow up to opening act is almost done. It's going to be called Mixtape. It's going to have a lot of what was in those in the mini comics, collecting those and kind of sequencing them and figuring out how to put them together. Yeah, I'm still working on new stuff. I'm working on what's the order and everything and cleaning things up, but that's probably going to be the next one. And then beyond that, I've been working with an agent for about a year on a book that would not be Cola Pop Creamies related. It would be more of a middle grade type book. And we're nearing the end of our putting together the pitch material. So hopefully that'll be coming together in the next few months. So yeah, a couple of big books. Yeah, it's why like I can only be here for a certain amount of time because I've got to I've got to draw tonight.
Yeah.
But yeah, those are the two things on the horizon. I'm very excited for both of them, and we shall see when they come out.
Good.
You mentioned mixtape for the name. Now, is there going to be a little playlist that you're going to put with it? So...
Yes. Yeah, there. I think part of it is so I pulled some stuff from two of the mini comics, Apples and Trash, for opening act, and so I compromised those. So I can't put them out the way they were. So I'm gonna have to kind of put them together as like a whole compilation, and that's where the whole idea for Mixtape came together.
Cool.
But yeah. So I'm pumped about that. I'm almost done.
Cool. All right, so I thought the best way to kind of close out this interview here, other than encouraging people to check out your Instagram page, which is at Desmond T. Reed, that
Yes.
will come up on the screen here as we're talking, and that's a great way to follow you, get the links to your books, check out your daily posts with these comics and with these characters. But I thought the other good thing too was to end on a quote from Myrna Gertrude. Because she once said, "I made marks on a piece of paper that made people feel things." And Desmond, that's exactly what you've done with your comics.
Agreed.
Thank you. I appreciate that. Thank you.
Good. So yeah, that will conclude the Creator Spotlight. It was awesome to have you on, and we'd be excited to have you back whenever you got something else cooking there. And yeah, thanks for coming on the show.
Thank you so much for having me. This was a blast. And yeah, just let me know and I will push people out of the way to get there. Yeah, I'm happy to be back anytime you want.
Sounds great. All right, we're going to move on to our next segment. Welcome to the weekly reviews. Just one last shout out to Desmond Reed in that last segment that we did. That was awesome to have him on the show. But now we're going to get back to normal business as we do the weekly reviews. That's where we go back and forth, talk about what we've been reading. This is a book I had a while back. I was just waiting for me to unbury it because there's a lot of stuff that just kept overflowing. I'm talking about something called Nuke Rooster #1. Nuke Rooster is a comic about a superhero space chicken traveling the universe, saving the day, and making friends and enemies along the way. This comic is done by Jevin Loop, and let's see here. Yeah, looks like he's got the created, written, and drawn by there. And so, what Nuke Rooster is, I started seeing this on Instagram when starting Cartoonist by Night and seeing, people to follow and and seeing the likes and the follows come in, I started checking out some of these creators, and Jevin Loop was one of those that popped in there. And he had just done a Kickstarter recently for Nuke Rooster, which had issues number 1 and 2. I had just missed out on that, but I was able to get my hands on this edition here. What this is here is a story about a superhero, Nuke Rooster, who shows up on this planet that is basically being taken over by a giant. And there are these hold on here, the smog gnomes. Yeah, the gnomes. There's some gnomes here on this planet that called out for help, and Nuke Rooster showed up, and they kind of have to debate on being like, all right, Nuke, you got to go in and take care of this guy. But this character is a literal giant, the bad guy here, who is kind of basically like sucking the energy, kind of like a Galactus sort of type, or kind of his mission to take the energy away from the planet. And Nuke Rooster has to come in and tries to basically have a conversation with this giant, and kind of talk him out of not doing this, because he's talking about how these gnomes, this is their only place to live, and they don't want it being taken away from them. But the giant doesn't really listen, and that's where the battle begins. But there's some good comedy in here, just kind of real, straight to superhero action. Kind of a big punch 'em up. There's a lot of good stuff going on here, and when you have a comic starring a giant, rooster as a superhero, that just what you're getting when you're jumping into that. Excellent splash page work with the action. Just a big battle. The whole issue is just about this big battle between Nuke Rooster and this giant. That's the first half of the comic. I'll leave the rest out there for anybody that wants to check it out. But I've reached out to Jevin Luke because I could figure out, I was late to that Kickstarter, so I got to figure out how to get this, if I maybe have to wait for another one, hopefully some more issues. But this is a very much kind of what we talked about. Never mind, I'm not going to say that. We didn't talk to anybody other than Desmond Reed. But talking about these one-off adventures where it is a very complete story. I like talking about one-off adventures. I'm just going to save that conversation for next week, because I think I have a really good thing. I think some people will be interested in that conversation. But this is fun. It's just kind of a one-off adventure superhero punch 'em up comic, and definitely what it did, it wanted me to read more. So I'm reaching out to at Jevin Loop on at Jevin Loop Art on Instagram, creator of Nuke Rooster. And so I got to figure out how to get my hands on more of this. So that was my first title here. Let's jump over to Kirby. What you got?
So I was just going to add in, though, Nuke Rooster, even against this giant, he doesn't chicken out. Where's Eric?
Yeah, Eric, somewhere in the world, Eric just like felt like a pain in his side, and he thinks that maybe he's got got to run to the ER or something.
Oh, somebody said a pun.
Kirby.
I got Mullet Cop, licensed to krill. Seafood restaurant owner, aspiring scientist Bob Duncan decided having a successful business was not enough, and attempted to improve his recipes by combining his own DNA with shrimp. When one of his lab experiments goes wrong, he turns into Shrimp Man and causes havoc in one of the food courts. Mullet Cop is taken in to infiltrate the scene with a battle-hardened SWAT team, but even they are no match for the merciless crustacean. This is fun. It's in a little 5x5 format. I figured this would be perfect since we had Desmond Reed on with the smaller comics. Same art style, same goofy mall cop parody, where he's just out to save the world with a talking microwave that helps him get his unique toys and weapons that he has to deal with. And of course, we got a character that combined and there's him and his talking microwave and his boss all getting them set up for the mission. But yeah, we had this character that just decided to cross his DNA with shrimp, and it gave us, here's kind of a picture of Shrimp Man attacking. It's just, they go into an area and they see the shell of the Shrimp Man. He shed his skin, so he was getting bigger and bigger, and Yeah, it was a fun little quick story about Mullet Cop dealing with the giant shrimp man attacking the food court in the mall. So, as always, lots of fun.
And a giant shrimp is not a pun, that's an oxymoron.
And then you got some other stuff there as well.
Oh, you want me to go? Okay.
Yep, I literally just had the one pick there. So
yeah, I have a bunch of ash cans, so I picked some out that I felt kind of fit with the Desmond Reed style of artwork, and well, not artwork, the layout of how he does his. First little one is Bad Eggs. This one is basically the story of what happens to the older kids that egg and abuse the younger kids when they're out trick-or-treating, and what happens to them in the long run later on at night. Kind of a little payback for what they did to the other kids. Some other things happen. And then we had the saga of Happy Ned. This is Happy Ned and his rabbit Spot. It's a look into a religious psychopath that kind of preaches his views on life onto people, and him and his rabbit kind of destroy anybody that doesn't follow in his path, and he kind of gets his paybacks throughout the storyline. But yeah, it's just fun little black and white artwork, him just pushing his beliefs and others with their beliefs and how they cross over. And then we had X-Lax, which is basically an X-Men parody comic where you get to see how a pathetic group of wannabe heroes make it through a day dealing with their first group of enemies that they come across. It's a lot of fun on all the different X-Men style characters. They got the little Wolverine character and stuff, Rogue and all that in there. And then the last little group was this. I had this little pack called 5 Little Comics. I'm like, what the heck? I'm gonna rip it open. Kind of sad once I found out what one was selling for after I did open. But first one is Birth of a Nation, where you basically, it's a strange look at the development of politics throughout all the things we learn throughout life with politics, and they just play on all that. And then we have Fun with Phonics, where it's basically phonics with visuals. A very simple read, and not much to it. Just watching characters using the little phonics language. We got Some Words Albert Likes. This is basically that. It's just a man and his words that he enjoys, and him just focusing on those words on each. It's like each page is its own little fun comic card, like a Sunday comics type comic cartoon in there, but they all kind of flow together nicely. We got another little epic. This one's the beginning of life to the destruction of life that an immortal is part of, and he rebuilds his life, and the life gets destroyed, and keeps trying to recreate the world. And no matter what he does, we always screw things up and destroy everything that we try and build. And he lives many, many years throughout this, and multiple generations and worlds that have come and been and gone. And then this is 15 Faces in Charcoal, and that's basically what it is. It's a silent book with 15 pages of faces that were drawn in charcoal. It's a really fun, enjoyable little quick reads. But yeah, I figure they fit well with Desmond's style. So.
Well, speaking of picking out little zines and ash cans and such, I just happened to notice something that I could also talk about in a very short, quick little review. I had gotten some stuff from Eric Wolfgang, who we've mentioned on the podcast before. I think we've done some show and tell. But I did, he had posted some art that was available. When I saw some images, I had to ask myself if I actually commissioned those or what was going on, realizing that there were 2 things I definitely would have asked him to draw. One being a Kermit the Frog. So Eric Wolfgang's Kermit the Frog on this sketch card. as well as Madman from the All Reds. So I had ordered that, and he threw in one of his little zine ashcan type comics, which is called Trick Nor Treat. This is something that I've seen him advertise a couple times, and now I got my hands on it. On the opening, it says, I can't promise now or what you'll feel after your brain forever brands this into your memory, but I can assure you that you will be feeling something after feasting your eyes upon this zine. If you wish to feel more things, consider checking out my shop. Just scan that weird shaped box with your pocket computer. If you're not from the future, then you can simply type in ericwolfgang.square.site. And that's Eric with a C. I don't know if the barcodes work on something like this, but here it is. But I also gave the address right there. So this is a short little trick or treat comic story about some kids just kind of going door to door, being excited about what houses give out the best stuff, and they come across the last house on the lane. And it sets up a real spooky, setup there with the lightning going on. And as it's happening, you see some Eric Wolfgang sketches there from Kirby. But yeah, this is a short little comic where they go into this lady's house and they kind of talk about this the legend of this lady and what they're expecting when they knock on it. You see a lot of creepy stuff. It's a very short comic, so I don't want to show and give anything away from there. But when these kids go up to this last house on the lane, you'll just have to check it out to see who or what opens the door that they were scared to go into. But yep, they've been making quite the haul there. But yeah, so that is Eric Wolfgang. Once again, Eric with the C. And you can check out his stuff at ericwolfgang.square.site. So yeah, I guess that's a nice little theme we had going on with Desmond Reed. And then with the pocket-sized square mullet cop and the ash cans that Kirby had there, it was a nice collection of independent creators making stuff, putting their artwork out there for the likes of us to purchase. All right. Well, that is going to do it for the show. Just do some plugs here. Once again, expressing extreme gratitude towards Desmond Reed for making the Cola Pop Creameries. That'll be his pop-up shop that he's probably going to have around Massachusetts, where he can go to all these Cola Pop Creameries and, for a day, they'll be designed, there'll be squiggly arms everywhere. But the Cola Pop Creameries, thank you for coming on the show, Desmond Reed. You can follow him at DesmondTReed.com or at Instagram rather. T is just the letter T. And all of the plugs for our Crimson Cowl related stuff will also be in the credits. But here's the brief rundown. CrimsonCowl.com. You can go there for info on these very podcasts and other stuff, including original webcomics, which David here is the writer of some of those that you'll see on there. So go to CrimsonCowl.com for original webcomics. If you're watching this on YouTube, hit the subscribe button, give us a like. That way this shows up in your feed. If you're listening to the audio version on iTunes, then jump on over to the YouTube and you can see a video version, especially when we have our creator guests and stuff like that. It's always fun to see the little bonuses and the show and tell with the artwork and stuff. And the Crimson Cowl, all one word, on Instagram. Over if you want to send us any fan mail, letters, page questions, or comments, Crimson Cowl Comic Club at yahoo.com. Kirby has a spin-off podcast called Under the Cowl of MS, covering many different things. You want to give our viewers and listeners a little brief kind of guide on what maybe has come out or what's coming out in the near future?
Yeah, I've got audio, video, YouTube, podcast, Instagram, all kinds of things going on right now. I sadly recorded about 12 videos this week and I keep forgetting to get them up in there. So there's going to be lots of videos coming out on YouTube in the next week that are going to be a variety of things, from comics, MS, dementia, unpacking, whatever. Just a good variety of fun stuff coming out. So check it out.
Cool. Yep. So subscribe to Under the Cowl of MS wherever you get your podcast, as well as YouTube. I have some hobby artist accounts on Facebook and Instagram at Anthony Latch, LAATSCH. I also co-host, along with my artist friends, the Cartoonist by Night drawing show on YouTube, cartoonistbynight.com. We have an All Yeah Comics featured episode. We have an episode with myself and Troy Dungara just hanging out and talking about, randomly Dennis the Menace and other things. We just dropped a Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles episode, which, by the way, has some art that David is showing off the original art because both David and Kirby had some Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtle art that was featured in that Cartoonist by Night Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles episode. And we will be dropping sometime in the near future, from the time of this recording, a Cartoonist by Night Happy Astronaut based episode to get the word out for Happy Astronaut. You've probably seen the trailer somewhere, beginning of the show or the end of the show. And yeah, so a lot of stuff going on there and many more things to be released through Cartoonist by Night. We have some upcoming guests here on this show. Those upcoming guests are Matt Fife and Matt Rogers. Speaking of Happy Astronaut, next week we're going to talk to those two gentlemen talking about Happy Astronaut. I have no idea what they're going to say. It's just going to be super off the wall. It's just like we're going to go in unscripted and blind, and all the sensors will be off, and just have absolutely no idea what those two will say in an interview that is definitely happening 1 week from the time of this recording. So that is a little promotion for what we're doing here at the Crimson Cowl Comic Club. We have some more club picks coming up soon. We picked a lot of new ones. We'll be doing the previews preview part 2 with the independent catalog, so maybe we'll find some more goodies. But that is going to do it for this episode. Once again, thank you, Desmond Reed, for showing up here on the show. But this is going to do it for this episode. This whole time, I haven't been a babysitter, but instead, I've been a party boy.
I've been the best at what I do, even though what I do is very nice.
I've been hanging with a bunch of bad eggs, including Mullet Cop and Wallace TJ.
And I've been somewhere over the rainbow.
I should have just had David go, to be continued.
To be continued.
Slimer.
Happy and his pal, a robotic stowaway named Half, are on a mission. Find whoever stole Half's missing pieces and get those pieces back. After promising each other that they'd pursue even the faintest of clues to the furthest of corners, our spacefaring duo have bounced from one adventure to the next, hoping that eventually they'll end up in the right place at the right time. Their next stop, a tiny little oasis on a giant planet of star-spewing volcanoes, a place where robots melt and humans bake, and magic-imbued stars rule the land, or so they think. Happy Astronaut is perfect for readers of all ages, filled with action, humor, and heart. This debut issue will have many exciting covers to choose from, including a blank sketch cover variant to commission your very own cover. Pre-order Happy Astronaut #1 from your local comic book shop or directly from KeenSpotShop.com.